Leanne, thank you, and hello. Welcome back to New Zealand, albeit with a virtual link through the lovely Zoom platform.
Thank you, Suzanne. It's great to connect.
Yeah, it's lovely to reconnect and lovely to see you in your camper van as you start your new journey. But that's not what we're here for today. So I was blown away when I read your book, and I just wanted to chat to you about your book a little bit. So for those people who haven't heard of it yet, just tell everybody what your book's called and yeah, just a little bit about what it's about.
Okay, thanks. So the book is called Open Me, the true story of a magical journey from fear to freedom. And so it's a true story. It is a story of a period in my life when I was going through some really challenging moments, a circumstance, and against all odds, I followed what felt right, and then was guided by intuitive inklings and niggles, and really is about courage, taking risks to set yourself free.
And some of those stories, I just hold you in awe that you went out into the wilderness and slept on your own on a rock. And yeah, boy, you could palpably feel the courage that must have taken to have done that. So what was it that went from this journey and this story to you writing the book? Why did you put it into text to share it with others?
Well, I really like that you've asked that, because the story itself wanted to be written. You know, after I lived this period of my life, I was thinking, oh, that would be a nice story to write, but I've had that thought before. And this one time I was at the farmer's market and bumped into this woman. Turns out she was a journalist and specialized in social media, and she helped authors to get their books out there. She turned to me and she said, "Leanne, I'll help you if you write that book." And so that was the spark that that got me going to write that
Beautiful.
book. Yeah. The other thing, though, because there was actually two reasons, and I was just remembering the second one now. So the book took me 4 years to write, and There were many times when I could have said, "Oh, you know what? I'm just going to put that on the shelf because this is hard." And after the first 2 years, I had written the manuscript, and I had an editor read it, and she said, "Leanne, I think you should take writing lessons." And I mean, I was greatly discouraged. Yeah. And I thought, that's the last thing I want to do is although writing lessons might have been very helpful, I didn't want to spend time writing something else that wasn't my book. I wanted help writing my book. And so I thought, okay, maybe I'm not a good writer. Maybe I'll get a ghostwriter and use my story. And I had two women read it, and one woman came back and she said, "Leanne, I can't be your ghostwriter." She said, "Firstly, I just haven't had those metaphysical experiences that you have. But she says, I want you to know that your book has already made a difference for me. And I've just decided to leave my husband. And I've been thinking about it for years." And I sit there and I took in a deep breath, like shocked, like, wow, that's really huge. And then the second woman came back to me and she said, "Leanne, I can't be your ghostwriter." She said, "Firstly, I want you to know that it's a page turner. I had to keep turning each page. I had to know what was going to happen next. But," she says, "I can't write your book now because I'm not going to have time, because I'm now so inspired. I'm going to write my book that I've been wanting to write." So the other why as to why I wrote this book is because I realized that the message wanted to be told in the world. Yeah. and it just had to be put there.
And I am so glad you didn't pick a ghostwriter, because actually that authenticity comes through every story and every twist and turn in the book. And I just don't think it would have been the same if it hadn't been your voice. So I'm really glad they turned you down.
Thank you. You know what? I'm glad that I embarked on that journey, because shortly after that, I found a writing coach, and she was fantastic, and she helped me, you know, gave me exercises, and 2 years later, there we have it.
So not only a journey of courage, but a journey of huge persistence as well.
Yes.
So tell me a little bit about the main character in the book. She's quite a character.
Well, she is, and another character is me, and I'm just going to talk about her in third person to answer your question. So the main character is she's very sensitive and very in tune to her environment, although outwardly doesn't display all of this, but inside there's a whole internal world that's going on. And it's the internal world that she reveals to people in the book. And so at many different moments, you know, she may be, you know, in a dilemma or in conflict, inner conflict, and there's vulnerability, and there's self-doubt, and there's fear of being judged, and just sharing as she goes through all that. And then as she listens to, you know, these intuitive messages that sometimes get overridden by, you know, her ego or her doubt. And so it's the character is very honest, and reveals herself in a very raw and vulnerable way, because, you know, this internal world is going on with everybody. And we don't all show that on the outside. So I think it's actually in the revealing of this inner journey at such a level that it enables the reader to actually come along with her on the journey and live it in their own lives as well.
And it really is real and raw and honest. And I mean, I had the privilege of knowing you before I read the book, but I think even if I hadn't, I would have felt like I knew you after reading the book. It really does feel real, and yet that vulnerability. How did that impact on you in terms of putting that rawness and vulnerability out there? What impacts that had on you?
Well, yeah, that's a great question. And you know, when I finished the book, and just before I published it, I had a moment of, oh my God, do I really want people knowing, you know, how insecure I can feel, and you know what goes on. And yeah, and then I realized, you know, I didn't write that book just for myself. I didn't write it to stay on my shelf, and for whatever it causes. I knew this was the next step to take my work to, or to take myself to. So I realized I couldn't hold the book back.
And again, I'm so glad you didn't hold it back, because I think it is that that vulnerability and depth that comes through that is the inspiration, because in a way it gives other strong women the permission to also be vulnerable and honest with themselves. And I would like to think there will be women all over the world who sit in a cafe with the book talking about some of those stories, but actually applying them to their own lives, and how a little bit of it resonates with them, or how it impacts on them and what they've done and decisions they're making.
Yeah.
And I hope they connect that back with you. I hope in some way you start to get these stories back of how it has, you know, literally changed somebody's life.
Well, I'm envisioning that, Suzanne. So I'm glad you're saying that. And yeah, so my vision is also to create a book club.
awesome.
An online book club,
Yeah.
so that we can do just that, because the messages are so powerful.
Oh,
They go so deep, and they inspire action or changes.
And while the book is absolutely about you, I do think that its place in the world is not about you. Its place in the world is actually about all of those women who read it.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that you say that, because the people I have spoken with who've read the book, it's not, the things that they share with me are actually about their own lives.
Yeah.
It's about the insights they had and the journey they went through while reading the book. And I realized that by my sharing my story, it's actually not about me. And they're actually not even really left with that at the end. They're left with their own life. And, yeah, I'm inspired by that.
Oh, how beautiful. So if there's somebody out there who hasn't yet got a hold of the copy of the book,
Mm-hmm.
and you could just say to them, what is that key message? Why should they go and get hold of a copy? What is it that you think is that absolute fundamental piece of information that if you could get it across in a sentence, what would that be for them?
Trust. Trust those inklings, trust those nudges, trust those little intuitive messages, because each and every one of those messages are the wings to our soul. They're the wings to our heart. And they will always, always lead us to freedom.
Beautiful. Leanne, thank you so much for giving me your time. For those of you who don't know who I am, my name's Suzanne Henwood. I run a company called Embraining for Success, and I take absolute pleasure and delight in talking to, interviewing, and connecting with amazing women around the world. Leanne, you're that woman for today. Thank you for spending your time. Do you want to just let people know where they can get hold of a copy of your new book, Open Me?
Thank you, Suzanne. It's been such a pleasure talking with you and being interviewed by you today. Yeah. So
even though I snuck in some unplanned questions.
That's great. The book is available on Amazon.com. And yeah, that's it. You can find me on Leanne Babcock .ca is my website.
And I thoroughly recommend, if you're listening to this, get in touch with Leanne, get a hold of her book. I couldn't put it down. I absolutely had long nights into the night where I was reading that book long after I could have gone to sleep. So thank you for sharing your story, for being real and raw, and being the amazing woman that you are.
Thank you, Suzanne.